The September sun felt too bright for a day that had started with an eviction notice. I sat on the worn park bench, watching Sophie swing higher and higher, her blonde ponytail flying like a victory flag. She didn't know we had 30 days to find a new apartment. She didn't know I'd worked a double shift last night and had another one starting in 3 hours. She didn't know her father hadn't sent child support in 8 months. All Sophie knew was that the sky was blue, the swings were free, and Mummy had promised ice cream after. "Hiya, Mummy! Watch me!" she called, her 6-year-old voice bright with uncomplicated joy. "I'm watching, baby," I called back, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. That's when I noticed him. He stood near the edge of the playground, impossibly out of place in an area where most parents wore yoga pants and tired expressions. His charcoal suit probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble-sharp jawline, intense eyes that seemed to catalogue everything around him with predatory awareness. But it wasn't his expensive appearance that made my stomach clench with instinctive warning. It was the way he was watching Sophie. I was halfway off the bench, maternal panic flooding my system, when a larger boy, maybe 9 or 10, shoved Sophie off the swing. She hit the ground hard, her small cry of pain piercing through the afternoon air like a knife to my chest. I ran, but the stranger moved faster. He was there before I could reach her, kneeling beside Sophie with a fluid grace that seemed choreographed. "Easy, little one," he said, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. "Let me see." "Don't touch her," I snapped, reaching them both and pulling Sophie against me protectively. Her knee was scraped, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. The stranger raised his hands immediately, backing up a respectful step. "Of course. I apologize." His eyes, dark and unreadable, shifted to the boy who'd pushed her. "You, come here." The authority in those 3 words made even me freeze. The bully approached reluctantly, his earlier bravado evaporating under the stranger's stare. "Apologize to the young lady," the man said quietly. "Now." Sorry," the boy stammered, then fled toward his distracted mother on the far side of the playground. Sophie sniffled against my shoulder, then peeked out at our unexpected defender. "You scared him away," she said, her tears already slowing with the resilience of childhood. A ghost of a smile touched the stranger's lips. "Bullies are usually cowards at heart." He glanced at me. "May I?" He gestured to a first aid kit that had appeared in his hand seemingly from nowhere. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. But Sophie's knee was bleeding, and I'd left our band-aids at home. "Fine," I said curtly. "But I'm right here." He nodded once, then knelt again, carefully cleaning Sophie's scrape with movements that suggested he'd done this before. "I'm Dominic," he said conversationally to Sophie. "What's your name?" "Sophie Marie Moretti," she announced with her characteristic lack of filter. "I'm 6 3/4. What's your favorite color?" "Yellow," he said without hesitation, applying an antibiotic ointment. "Like sunshine." Sophie's eyes widened with delight. "That's my favorite color too. Mummy says it's because I'm always happy." She tilted her head, studying him with unnerving directness. "Are you happy, Mr. Dominic?" Something flickered across his expression, surprise. "Maybe," or something deeper. "I'm working on it, Sophie." He finished bandaging her knee with professional efficiency, then stood. His attention shifted to me, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch despite myself. "Your daughter is charming," he said, his accent subtle but present Italian, maybe, or something close to it. "Thank you for helping," I managed, standing and taking Sophie's hand. "We should go." "Of course." He reached into his jacket, and I tensed, but he only produced a business card, in case she has any trouble with that scrape. "Or with bullies." I took the card reflexively. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Dominic Salvatore with a phone number, but no company name. "What do you do, Mr. Salvatore?" I asked, my social work instincts pinging warnings I couldn't quite name. His smile was polite, carefully neutral. I solved problems. Before I could respond, Sophie tugged his hand. "Mr. Dom, can I call you Mr. Dom?" "It's easier. My birthday's next month." I'm having a party with yellow cake and balloons. Do you want to come? Sophie, I said sharply, mortified. Mr. Salvatore is busy. I would be honored, Dominic interrupted, his dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse spike, if your mother permits it. The air between us suddenly felt charged, dangerous. Behind him I noticed for the first time a black SUV with tinted windows parked at the curb. A man in a dark suit leaned against it, watching us with the stillness of a predator. Warning bells screamed in my head. That's very kind, I said carefully, pulling Sophie closer. But we don't really know you, Mummy, please. Sophie's eyes were wide and pleading. He's nice. He likes yellow, and he scared away the mean boy. Dominic's expression softened as he looked at my daughter. Perhaps we could meet again. Somewhere public. So your mother can see I'm trustworthy. His gaze returned to me, and something in those dark depths made my stomach flutter, despite my better judgment. I understand her caution. It's the mark of a good mother. Before I could decline more firmly, he nodded once. A gesture that felt oddly formal, and walked toward the waiting SUV. Sophie waved enthusiastically. Bye, Mr. Dom? He paused, turning back with a smile that transformed his severe features. Goodbye, Principessa, then to me, Miss Moretti. I hope we meet again soon. The SUV pulled away, leaving me standing in the middle of the playground with my daughter's hand in mine and a business card burning in my pocket. I like him, Mummy, Sophie announced, swinging our joined hands. He has kind eyes. I watched the SUV disappear around the corner, my heart still racing with adrenaline I couldn't quite explain. Kind eyes, maybe. But kind men didn't have armed drivers and business cards with no company names. And they definitely didn't look at single mothers like they'd been searching for them their entire lives. I told myself it was coincidence. The first time I saw Dominic Salvatore again was 4 days after the playground. I was late for my diner shift, rushing through Sophie's school pickup, when I spotted him across the street, leaning against that same black car, watching the entrance with predatory stillness. My stomach dropped. Mummy, it's Mr. Dom! Sophie waved before I could stop her. Dominic straightened, raising a hand in acknowledgement, but keeping his distance. He simply watched us walk to my beat-up Honda, his dark eyes tracking our every movement. I felt his gaze on us the entire time. The second time was 3 days later. I was in the middle of the dinner rush at the diner, balancing plates in exhaustion, when that distinctive prickle of awareness ran down my spine. I turned, and there he was, sitting in a corner booth. Ordering coffee like this was normal. Our eyes met across the crowded room. He didn't smile, didn't pretend, just watched me with that unnerving intensity while his coffee grew cold, untouched. For the next hour I felt his presence like a physical weight. When my shift ended at 11, I changed with shaking hands and headed for the employee exit. The parking lot was dark. My brave confrontation evaporated into fear. Miss Moretti! I spun. Dominic stood near my car, hands in pockets, expression carefully neutral. This is harassment, I said, trying to sound brave. I'm calling the police, please don't. His hands raised slightly. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Explain what? Why you're stalking us? I'm not stalking you, Maya. The use of my first name, which I'd never given him, sent ice through me. I'm protecting you. How do you even know my name? The same way I know you work 2 jobs and that your ex-boyfriend Marco Castellano hasn't contacted you in 8 months. He stepped closer, genuine concern beneath the intimidating exterior. The same way I know Marco owes my organization $800,000. And that debt is looking for him through you. My mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Marco was a courier for my family. He got greedy, stole funds, and disappeared. His gaze locked onto mine. That makes you and Sophie loose ends. Other people, less patient than me, might want to tie up. Your organization, I repeated, hollow. You mean the mafia? He didn't deny it. I prefer family business with complex logistics. A hysterical laugh escaped. This is insane. Marco was a deadbeat, not a criminal. He was both, Dominic interrupted quietly. And now you're vulnerable to people far more dangerous than him. So what do you want? Money I don't have. I haven't seen Marco in 4 years. I don't want anything from you. His voice dropped. I want to protect you, whether you want me to or not. I moved toward my car. Sophie and I will be fine. His hand caught my arm firm, not rough. 3 days ago, 2 men were asking questions at your building. Yesterday, someone followed you from your morning shift. You didn't notice because you were exhausted. My men did. His grip loosened. You're not fine, Maya. And Sophie double quotes. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Why do you care? I whispered, searching his face. If this isn't about me, why are you here? Silence stretched between us. Then, because when I investigated Marco, I found you. I watched security footage from your building, watched you fight like hell to give Sophie a good life despite a man who abandoned you both. His voice roughened. I decided that woman deserved better than to become collateral damage. My breath caught at the raw honesty. I'm not here to collect Marco's debt, Dominic continued. I'm here to make sure no one else tries to. Behind us, a car engine started. Dominic's entire demeanor shifted, alert, dangerous. His hand moved to his jacket, and I realized with cold clarity he was armed. Get in your car, he said quietly. Lock the doors. Go straight home. My men will follow. Dominic, please, Maya. His dark eyes met mine, and I saw something unexpected. Genuine fear. Trust me this once. For Sophie. The invocation of my daughter's name decided it. I got in my car with trembling hands and drove home. In my rearview mirror, 2 black SUVs followed at a careful distance, shadows I couldn't shake. When I reached our apartment, Sophie was asleep on the couch, clutching her yellow teddy bear. I sank beside her, smoothing her hair, and let the tears finally fall. Because Dominic Salvatore was right. I wasn't fine. And the most terrifying part? Some desperate part of me wanted to believe his protection was real, that a dangerous man in expensive suits could actually keep us safe, that maybe, just maybe, we weren't facing this alone anymore. 2 weeks passed without another encounter. I almost convinced myself Dominic Salvatore had been a fever dreamer, dangerous stranger who'd appeared and disappeared like smoke. I threw myself into double shifts, scraped together enough for Sophie's birthday cake, and tried to ignore the black SUVs I occasionally spotted on our street. Sophie's 7th birthday fell on a Saturday. I'd taken the day off, a luxury I couldn't afford but refused to miss. We decorated our tiny apartment with yellow streamers and balloons from the dollar store. It wasn't much, but Sophie's face glowed with pure joy. Best birthday ever, Mummy, she declared, spinning in her new sundress, second-hand but perfectly yellow. Then someone knocked on the door. I checked the peephole and my heart stopped. Dominic Salvatore stood in our dingy hallway, holding a teddy bear nearly as tall as Sophie and looking completely out of place in his tailored charcoal suit. Mummy, who is it? Sophie called. I opened the door slowly. Mr. Salvatore, this is ... unexpected. I was invited. His lips curved slightly, though I understand if the invitation is rescinded. Before I could respond, Sophie appeared at my hip. A squeal of delight was ear-splitting. Dom, you came. And you brought... Oh my gosh, he's huge. Dominic knelt smoothly to her level, offering the enormous yellow bear. Happy birthday, Principessa! Believe yellow is your favorite color, you remembered. Sophie threw her arms around the bear, then impulsively hugged Dominic too. Over her blonde head, his dark eyes met mine. Something passed between us. A question, a promise, a warning. I wasn't sure which. Come in, I heard myself say. We were just about to have cake. The sight of this powerful, dangerous man sitting cross-legged on our worn carpet, helping Sophie blow out 7 candles on a homemade cake, created a surreal disconnect in my brain. He sang happy birthday in a rich baritone that made my skin tingle. He ate a slice of my slightly lopsided cake and called it delicious with complete sincerity. He was perfect with her. Patient, attentive. genuinely interested in her 7-year-old observations about unicorns and why yellow was scientifically the best color. After cake, Sophie played with her new bear, whom she'd immediately named Sunny, while I cleaned up in our tiny kitchen. Dominic appeared beside me, drying dishes without being asked. "You didn't have to come," I said quietly. She invited me. I keep my promises. He set down a plate. Especially to children. The simple statement revealed more than he probably intended. "There's something else." He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. "I wanted to give this to you privately." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a hospital bill. Sophie's emergency room visit from 2 months ago when her asthma flared. $4,000 I'd been making minimum payments on, destroying my credit. Stamped across it in red, paid in full. Beneath it, a note in elegant handwriting. "Every child deserves a worry-free birthday." "Dear, I can't accept this," I whispered, even as tears blurred my vision. "This is too much. It's already done." His voice was gentle, but firm. "Consider it a birthday gift. You don't give $4,000 gifts to strangers. You're not strangers." He turned to face me fully, his intensity making the small kitchen feel even smaller. "Not to me." Before I could process that statement, Sophie's voice called from the living room. "Mommy! Mr. Dom, come see Sunny's house." We spent the next hour in Sophie's imaginary world-building pillow forts, having teddy bear tea parties, listening to elaborate stories about Sunny's adventures. Dominic participated with complete seriousness, never checking his phone, never seeming impatient. When Sophie finally crashed on the couch, exhausted from excitement, Dominic carefully draped a blanket over her. "I should go," he said quietly. "Let her rest." I walked him to the door, my emotions a tangled mess of gratitude, suspicion, and something more dangerous I didn't want to name. "Thank you," I said, "for today. For the bill. For ... everything." He paused in the doorway. "Maya, I need to tell you something." His expression had shifted. Serious. Almost grim. "Marco's creditors are getting more aggressive. They broke into your building's storage unit last week. They're searching." Ice flooded my veins. "For what?" "Whatever Marco might have hidden. Money, information, leverage." His jaw tightened. "They're getting desperate, which makes them dangerous. What do I do?" "Let me protect you." He stepped closer, and I caught that scent-expensive cologne and something uniquely him. "Properly. Move into a safe location. Accept full security. Let me make them disappear. I can't just uproot Sophie. They know where you live, Maya." His voice dropped. "It's only a matter of time before watching turns into action." I looked back at Sophie, sleeping peacefully with Sunny clutched in her arms, the daughter I would die to protect. "If I agree," I said slowly, "what does that mean? What would you expect in return?" Something flickered in his dark eyes. "Nothing you're not willing to give. I only ask for trust, and time to prove I'm worthy of it." My heart hammered against my ribs. "This is insane." "Yes," he agreed. "But it's also your safest option." Through the thin walls, I heard our neighbor's TV, a reminder of how exposed we were, how vulnerable, how soon. I whispered, "Tonight. My men are already positioned. One call, and you'll be somewhere Marco's creditors can never reach." I should have said no, should have run, should have done anything except what I did next. "Okay," I breathed. "But Sophie comes first. Always." Dominic's expression softened with something like reverence. "Always," he promised. And in that moment, I realized I'd just made a deal with the devil. I only hoped he was the kind of devil who kept his word. Within 2 hours, our entire life was packed into suitcases. Dominic's men moved with efficient silence, 3 of them, all built like linebackers, all treating Sophie with surprising gentleness when she peppered them with questions. I held her hand as we descended the apartment stairs for the last time, my heart caught between relief and terror. The SUV waiting outside was different from the others, larger, more luxurious. Sophie climbed in with wide eyes, while I took one last look at the building that had been our home. "You can come back any time," Dominic said quietly beside me. "This isn't permanent unless you want it to be." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and got in the car. The drive took 40 minutes, leaving the city behind for rolling hills and estates hidden behind stone walls. When we finally turned through iron gates, Sophie pressed her face to the window. "Mummy, look! It's like a castle!" She wasn't entirely wrong. The house mansion really rose 3 stories of elegant stone and glass, surrounded by manicured gardens that seemed to glow in the evening light. A fountain sparkled near the entrance, and beyond it, I glimpsed what looked like a pool. "This is where you live?" I asked, stunned. Dominic's expression was carefully neutral. "This is where we live now, if you choose to stay." Sophie was already out of the car before it fully stopped, spinning in circles on the circular driveway. "There's so much space." A woman in her 50s appeared at the entrance, warm smile, kind eyes, dressed professionally but not formally. "You must be Maya and Sophie. I'm Elena, the house manager. Let me show you to your rooms. Rooms plural," I asked. "Mr. Salvatore was very specific about your comfort," Elena said, leading us inside. The interior took my breath away, high ceilings, gleaming floors, artwork that looked museum-worthy. But Elena didn't linger, guiding us up a sweeping staircase to the 2nd floor. She opened a door and Sophie gasped. The room was every 7-year-old's fantasy. A canopy bed draped in sheer yellow fabric dominated one wall. A window seat overlooked gardens lit by soft lights. Shelves held books and toys. A small table set for tea parties occupied one corner. Everything, the curtains, the rugs, the cushions, was in varying shades of yellow. "You did this," I said to Dominic, who'd followed us upstairs, "for her." His gaze was steady. "Every child deserves a space that feels like theirs." Sophie was already exploring, squealing over each new discovery. "Mommy, look! There's a balcony! And books! And—" she turned, running back to throw her arms around Dominic's legs. "Thank you, mister. Dom, this is the best room ever." He knelt, his large hands gentle on her small shoulders. "You're very welcome, Principessa. I hope you'll be happy here. Your room is connected through there," Elena told me, indicating a door. "Mr. Salvatore's suite is down the hall, but he wanted you to have privacy and space. My room was equally stunning. Sophisticated where Sophie's was whimsical, with a king bed, sitting area, and bathroom that could fit our entire old apartment. Through the windows I could see the gardens and, beyond them, the distant lights of the city we'd left behind." "Is it acceptable?" Dominic asked from the doorway, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "It's overwhelming," I admitted. "All of this." "I don't know how to. You don't have to know," he interrupted gently. "Just be here. Let Sophie be safe. The rest will come." That night, Elena prepared dinner reel, homemade food that made my frozen dinner life feel like a distant memory. We ate in a dining room that could seat 20, but somehow Dominic made it feel intimate, focusing entirely on Sophie's chatter about her new room. Her stuffed bear, Sunny, her excitement about the pool. "Can I have swimming lessons?" Sophie asked, eyes hopeful. "I've always wanted to learn, but Mummy says lessons are expensive." "Nothing is too expensive for your happiness," Dominic said, glancing at me. "If your mother approves." The casual wealth in that statement should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, I felt a knot loosen in my chest, the constant anxiety about money, about providing, about being enough. "Swimming lessons sound wonderful," I managed. After dinner, Sophie insisted on a movie. We ended up in a media room with a screen bigger than my old bedroom. Sophie nestled between us on a massive couch, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Halfway through the animated film, her head drooped against Dominic's shoulder, then mine, then back to his. "She's out," I whispered, looking at my daughter's peaceful face. Dominic smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features. "She had a big day." He carefully shifted, lifting Sophie into his arms with practiced ease. "I'll take her to bed." I followed, watching as he carried my daughter through the house, navigating stairs and hallways without hesitation. In her yellow room, he laid her gently on the bed, removed her shoes, and pulled the covers up. "Brononot, Principessa," he murmured, brushing hair from her forehead. The tenderness in the gesture broke something in my chest. Outside her room, I caught his arm. "Why are you doing this? Really?" His dark eyes held mine. "Because Sophie deserves a childhood free from fear. Because you deserve rest after years of fighting alone." He paused. "And because when I see you both, I see something I didn't know I wanted. Something worth protecting." The intensity of his admission left me breathless. "She's getting attached," I whispered. "She already calls you Mr. Dom like your family. Is that so terrible?" His voice was low, careful. "To let her feel safe, to let yourself feel safe." "I don't know how to do this," I confessed. "How to accept help. How to trust you." "Then don't trust me yet," he said simply. "Just stay. Give me time to prove myself worthy." As he walked away down the hall, I stood in the doorway of my daughter's yellow paradise. Realizing the truth I'd been avoiding, Dominic Salvatore wasn't just protecting us. He was becoming part of us. And that terrified me more than any threat Marco's creditors could pose. 3 weeks into living at the estate, I finally demanded answers. Sophie was asleep upstairs, exhausted from her first swimming lesson. Elena had retired for the evening. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of rain against the windows. I found Dominic in his study, a room I'd avoided until now. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that screamed power. He looked up from his laptop as I entered, surprise flickering across his features. "Maya, is everything all right?" "Does Sophie need—" "I need the truth," I interrupted, closing the door behind me. "All of it. No more vague explanations or careful deflections." He studied me for a long moment, then closed his laptop with deliberate care. "Ask your questions. Who are you?" "You already know the answer." His voice was steady, unflinching. "I'm the head of the Salvatore crime family, 3rd generation. We control territory from here to Boston, gambling, protection, some import-export businesses that don't bear close examination. The casual admission of criminality should have sent me running. Instead, I stepped closer. And Marco, a low-level courier who got greedy. He diverted $800,000 during a transport. Small amount in the grand scheme, but theft is theft. Dominic's jaw tightened. He knew the consequences. He ran anyway. "So you came after me for revenge?" "No." The single word was sharp, almost pained. "I came after you because—" He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Sit down, Maya, please." I perched on the edge of a leather chair, my heart hammering. Dominic rose, moving to the window, his broad shoulders tense. When Marco disappeared, I ordered a background check. Standard procedure. That's when I found you and Sophie. He turned, his dark eyes intense. "I could have sent men to question you, to search your apartment. That's protocol. But instead, I watched the security footage. You've mentioned that before. For 6 months, Maya." His voice dropped. "I watched you for 6 months. Not because of Marco's debt. Because of you." The confession hung between us like a live wire. "I watched you carry groceries up 3 flights because the elevator was broken. Watched you leave for work before dawn and come home after midnight. Watched you help your elderly neighbor with her shopping, even though you could barely afford your own." He moved closer, each word deliberate. "I watched you read to Sophie every night, no matter how exhausted you were. Watched you sacrifice meals so she could eat. Watched you cry in your car after she fell asleep because you thought no one could see." Tears burned my eyes. "That's not romantic, Dominic. That's stalking." It was research that became fascination, that became something I've never felt before. He knelt before my chair, bringing us eye level. "You're extraordinary, Maya. Your strength, your devotion, your refusal to compromise Sophie's happiness despite impossible odds." I've built an empire on loyalty and power, but I've never witnessed loyalty like yours. So what? My voice shook. You decided to collect me like one of your assets? I decided Sophie deserved a father who could see how remarkable her mother is, he said quietly. I decided you deserved someone who could ease your burden instead of adding to it. I decided I wanted to be that man. The raw honesty in his admission stole my breath. You don't know us, I whispered. Not really. You watch through cameras. I know you take your coffee light with cream, no sugar. I know Sophie's favorite book is about a yellow butterfly. I know you're studying nursing because you want to help people the way no one helped you when you needed it most. His hand reached toward my face, hovering, asking permission. I know your ex-boyfriend destroyed your trust and left you to raise a child alone. I know every bill you've struggled to pay, every sacrifice you've made, every dream you've postponed. A tear slipped down my cheek. His thumb caught it, gentle, despite the calluses I could feel on his skin. Why? I asked. Why do you care? Because in a world built on violence and transactions, you're something pure, something worth protecting. His voice roughened. Because when I look at Sophie, I see the childhood I never had, innocent, joyful, full of possibility. And when I look at you, I see the future I never thought I deserved. What are you asking for? My heart raced. Really? Let me be Sophie's father figure. Let me provide the stability you fought so hard to give her. Let me be the man you come home to. He paused, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Let me prove I can be worthy of you both. This is insane, I breathed. You're a criminal. Your world is dangerous. My world will never touch you or Sophie, he interrupted fiercely. I've kept that darkness separate from everything good for 35 years. I won't fail now. And if I say no, if I take Sophie and leave. Pain flashed across his features. Then I'll ensure you have resources to start fresh somewhere safe. New identity, financial security, protection from a distance. His eyes held mine. I won't trap you, Maya, but I'm asking, begging for a chance to prove myself. The rain drummed harder against the windows. Somewhere in the house a clock chimed midnight. I need time, I said finally, to think. To figure out if this is real or if I'm just desperate enough to believe it. Take all the time you need. He rose, stepping back. I'm a patient man. As I stood to leave, his voice stopped me at the door. Maya? I turned. Thank you, he said softly, for listening, for not running, for giving me this chance. I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat, and fled to my room. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying his confession. A dangerous man who'd watched me for months, who knew my struggles, my dreams, my sacrifices, who wanted to give Sophie the father she'd never had, who looked at me like I was something precious instead of broken. The question wasn't whether Dominic Salvatore was dangerous, it was whether I was brave enough to let him close anyway. The question came on a Tuesday morning, casual as asking for pancakes. Mummy, is Uncle Dom going to be my daddy? I froze, coffee cupped halfway to my lips. Sophie sat at the breakfast table, swinging her legs, her expression innocently curious. Behind her, through the window, I could see Dominic in the garden talking on his phone or business, and sharp edges in the morning light. What makes you ask that, sweetheart? I managed. Buying time. 'Cause he acts like a daddy. Sophie counted on her fingers. He makes sure I eat breakfast. He reads me stories. He taught me to swim. And yesterday when I scraped my knee, he put on the Band-Aid and kissed it better. She tilted her head. That's what daddies do, right? My throat tightened. Those are things people who care about you do. But he lives with us. And he looks at you the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book. Her 7-year-old logic was devastatingly simple. So is he going to be my daddy or not? I set down my coffee with shaking hands. It's complicated, baby. Why? Because he's a criminal? Because I've known him 6 weeks. Because I'm terrified of making another mistake that will break your heart. Because grown-up relationships take time, I said carefully. and we need to be sure about big decisions like that. Sophie considered this, then shrugged with the resilience of childhood. Okay, but I hope he stays. I like having him here. She skipped off to find Elena, leaving me alone with a question I didn't know how to answer. That evening, I stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, the weight of everything pressing down on me. 6 weeks of living in luxury. 6 weeks of watching Dominic be everything Sophie needed. 6 weeks of feeling something dangerous bloom in my chest every time he smiled. You're thinking too loud. I turned to find Dominic approaching, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. He looked almost human like this. Less mafia boss, more just ... man. Sophie asked me something today, I said quietly. He stopped beside me, close enough that I felt his warmth. I know. Elena told me. Of course she did. I laughed without humor. Does everyone in this house report to you? It's only when they're worried about you. His voice was gentle. What did you tell her? That it's complicated. I turned to face him. But she's getting attached, Dominic. She calls you Uncle Dom. She waits for you to come home. My voice cracked. She's building a future in her head where you're her father. And when this arrangement ends, when Marco's debt is settled and we leave, you're not leaving. The words were absolute, brooking no argument. Either of you. You can't just decide that. I can. He moved closer, his intensity palpable. I have decided. You and Sophie aren't temporary, Maya. You're not guests or obligations or loose ends to be managed. You're mine to protect, mine to provide for. Mine too. He stopped, jaw tight. Yours to what? I challenged. Mine to love, he said roughly. If you'll let me. The declaration hung between us, raw and honest and terrifying. Sophie can't be part of this decision if I make it alone, I whispered. She deserves a say in who becomes her father figure. She's already been abandoned once, then I'll ask her permission. I blinked. What? Dominic's expression softened with something like reverence. If I'm going to be her father, not just a man who lives in her house, but her true father in every way that matters, she should have a choice. His dark eyes held mine. I'll earn her trust first, prove myself worthy, and when the time is right, I'll ask for her permission to marry you. My breath caught. You want to marry me? Eventually, yes. He said it like it was obvious. But not until Sophie knows she can trust me. Not until you know you can trust me. Not until we're a family in truth, not just proximity. Tears burned my eyes. You would ask a 7-year-old for permission to marry her mother. She's the most important person in your life, he said simply, which makes her approval more valuable than anything else in this world. The man who commanded empires with fear and violence was standing before me, offering to put his future in the hands of a child. What if she says no? I asked. Pain flickered across his features. Then I'll accept it. Keep protecting you both from a distance. Hope that someday I can earn that yes. I stared at him, this complicated, dangerous, impossibly gentle man, and felt the last wall around my heart begin to crumble. You're serious, I breathed. About you? About Sophie? He reached up, cupping my face with a tenderness that belied his calloused hands. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Standing on that terrace as the sun set over the gardens, I realized the truth I'd been fighting for weeks. I was falling in love with Dominic Salvatore. Not because he'd saved us, not because he'd provided safety and luxury, but because he saw my daughter as a person worthy of respect, choice, and agency. Because he understood that winning Sophie's heart mattered more than any power he wielded. Because the mafia boss who could command anything with violence had chosen instead to wait for a child's permission. Earn it then, I whispered. Earn her trust. Prove you'll never leave. And if Sophie gives her blessing, I paused, my heart racing. Then ask me again. Dominic's smile was sunrise after storm, brilliant, transformative, full of hope. Challenge accepted, Principessa's mother, he murmured. And in that moment, I knew our story was just beginning. The first time Dominic attempted to braid Sophie's hair, I found him in her bathroom watching a YouTube tutorial on his phone, muttering in Italian. "Uncle Dom, you're pulling too tight," Sophie complained, though she was clearly delighted by his efforts. "Scusa, principessa. Let me try again." His large hands, more accustomed to weapons than ribbons, fumbled with the yellow hair tie. I leaned against the doorframe, watching this feared mafia boss concentrate like he was diffusing a bomb. "Need help?" "No," he said stubbornly. "I can do this." 20 minutes and 3 attempts later, Sophie had a slightly lopsided but recognizable French braid. She examined it in the mirror, then threw her arms around Dominic's neck. "It's perfect." "Can you do it every day?" Over her shoulder, his eyes met mine, vulnerable, hopeful, asking if he was doing this right. I smiled, my heart expanding. "You're getting better." 2 weeks later, Sophie had a role in her school play A Sunflower in the garden scene. She was terrified. What if I forget my line? She worried at breakfast. What if everyone laughs? Dominic set down his coffee. "How many lines do you have?" "Just one." I stretched toward the sun, she demonstrated, arms reaching up. "Then we practice." He stood, moving to the center of the kitchen. "I'll be the audience. Show me." For the next hour, he sat in various chairs around the house while Sophie practiced her entrance, her line, her exit. He applauded each time. He offered gentle suggestions. He never once checked his phone, despite it buzzing with what I knew were business calls. On the night of the play, Dominic sat beside me in the elementary school auditorium, looking absurdly out of place in his expensive suit among the yoga pants-wearing parents. But when Sophie appeared on stage in her yellow sunflower costume, he leaned forward, completely focused. I stretched toward the sun. Sophie's voice rang clear, her small arms reaching up with confidence. Dominic applauded so loudly that several parents turned to stare. He didn't care. "That's my girl," he murmured, and something in my chest cracked wide open, because Sophie wasn't his daughter. Not legally, not biologically, but in every way that mattered, she was becoming his. The treehouse was his idea. "Every child should have a fort," he declared one Saturday morning. "A place that's entirely theirs." He spent 3 weekends building it, Sophie as his assistant, handing him nails and providing a running commentary on the proper color scheme, yellow, obviously. I watched from the garden, seeing a side of Dominic I'd never imagined. He was patient when Sophie dropped tools, encouraging when she worried they were building it wrong, gentle when she got a splinter, carrying her inside to tend to it with the same care he'd shown that first day at the playground. "You're good at this," I told him one evening as we stood beneath the nearly finished treehouse. "At carpentry?" He wiped sawdust from his hands. At being a father, he was quiet for a long moment. I never thought I'd have this. A family. Someone who looks at me like I'm a hero instead of a monster. "Sophie sees what I'm starting to see," I said softly. The man beneath the reputation. His eyes held mine, dark and intense. "And what do you see, Maya?" "Someone worth trusting," I whispered. Bedtime stories became sacred ritual. Every night, after Sophie bathed and changed into her pajamas, Dominic would settle into the reading chair in her yellow room. She'd curl up beside him while he read, doing different voices for each character, making her giggle with exaggerated accents and sound effects. One night I lingered in the doorway, watching them finish a story about a brave princess and a reformed dragon. "Uncle Dom?" Sophie's voice was drowsy. "Do you love my mummy?" I froze. Dominic's hand stilled on the book. "Yes," he said simply. "Very much." "Good." Sophie yawned. "Because she looks at you the way princesses look at princes in my movies. Like your magic. Your mother is the magical one, tesoro mio." He kissed her forehead. "She created you, didn't she?" Sophie giggled sleepily. "You're silly." As her breathing evened into sleep, Dominic looked up and found me in the doorway. The expression on his face, tender, hopeful, completely undone by a 7-year-old's simple acceptance, made my heart race. He carefully extricated himself from Sophie's grip, tucking her blanket around her, then joined me in the hallway. "She called you silly," I whispered. The man feared by half the criminal underworld. I am silly around her. He smiled, soft and genuine. She makes me want to be someone better. You are better, I said. You have been from the moment you decided to ask her permission instead of just taking what you wanted. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. I'm ready, Maya. Ready to ask her, if you'll allow it. My breath caught. You think she'll say yes? I think she already loves me as much as I love her. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But she deserves to be asked. To have that choice. Looking at this man who'd learned to braid hair and build treehouses, who read bedtime stories and attended school plays, who'd transformed himself from captor to protector to father, I knew the truth. Sophie would say yes, and so would I. Ask her tomorrow, I whispered, in the garden. She loves it there. Dominic's smile could have lit the entire house. Tomorrow, then, he agreed. I asked for permission to become her father. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, your husband. As he walked to his room that night, I realized I was no longer afraid. I was ready. Ready to be chosen. Ready to choose. Ready to build this impossible family. Ready for whatever came next. The next morning dawned clear and perfect, the kind of day that felt designed for important moments. I watched from the kitchen window as Dominic approached Sophie in the garden. She was playing with Sunny, her yellow teddy bear, setting up an elaborate tea party beneath the oak tree. My heart hammered against my ribs. Elena appeared beside me, offering a cup of tea I didn't remember asking for. He's nervous, she observed quietly. I've worked for Mr. Salvatore for 12 years. I've never seen him nervous. He's about to ask a 7-year-old for permission to become her father, I whispered. He should be nervous. Through the window I watched Dominic kneel in the grass beside Sophie. His suit would be ruined, but he didn't seem to care. From the garden, Principessa, may I join your tea party? Sophie looked up, her face brightening. Of course, you can be the knight. Sunny is the princess, and I'm the queen. Dominic accepted a tiny plastic teacup with complete seriousness. A great honor. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, surrounded by stuffed animals and Sophie's elaborate imaginary kingdom. Then Dominic set down his cup, his expression shifting to something more solemn. Sophie, I need to ask you something very important. She tilted her head, sensing the change in his tone. Okay, you know how much I care about you and your mother, yes? Sophie nodded. You love us. You told me when you read the dragon story. His throat worked. I do love you, both of you, very much. And I want to ask, he paused, choosing his words with the care of someone who understood how much this moment mattered. May I have your permission to marry your mother? Sophie's eyes went wide. You want to marry Mummy? Only if you approve. Dominic's voice was steady, despite the vulnerability in his eyes. You're the most important person in her life, which makes your opinion the most important to me. This is your choice, Sophie. If you say no, I'll respect that. She studied him with that unnerving directness children possess, the ability to see past pretense to truth beneath. If you marry Mummy, does that mean you'll be my daddy? My real daddy? If you want me to be, he said gently. I would be honored to be your father, Sophie. To be there for every birthday, every scraped knee, every school play. To teach you things and protect you and love you the way you deserve. Not like Marco. Her voice was smaller now. He left. He said he'd come back, and he never did. Dominic's jaw tightened, but his voice remained soft. I am not Marco. I will never be like Marco. How do I know? The question was heartbreaking in its simplicity. A child who'd already learned that promises could be broken. You don't, Dominic admitted with devastating honesty. Not yet. But I'm asking for the chance to prove it. Every single day for the rest of my life. I want to show you that I keep my promises. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, picking at the grass. Then, will you make Mummy cry, like Marco made her cry? Only happy tears, Dominic said, his voice thick. I promise you, Tesoro, I will spend my life making her smile, not cry. And you'll never leave us? Even when things get hard? Never. The word was absolute. You and your mother are mine to protect, mine to care for, mine to love, always. Sophie considered this, her small face serious beyond her years. Then slowly, a smile broke across her features like sunrise. Then yes, she said, but you have to promise 3 things. Anything. She held up 3 fingers, counting carefully. First, you have to come to all my tea parties. Not just sometimes. All of them. Done. Second, you have to keep reading me bedtime stories. With the funny voices. Every night, he agreed. And third, her voice grew fierce, protective of her mother in a way that made my eyes burn from my position at the window. You can never leave us like Marco did. Not ever. Even if you get mad or tired or things are hard. You have to stay. Dominic pulled her into his arms, his large frame shaking slightly. I promise, Sophie. All 3. I will never, ever leave you or your mother. You have my word. Sophie hugged him back fiercely, her small arms barely reaching around his shoulders. Then you can be my daddy. My real daddy. When she pulled back, she was grinning. Can I call you Papa? I like that better than Daddy. I would love nothing more, Principessa. His voice broke on the words. Papa? Sophie tested, the word tasting new and wonderful in her mouth. Then louder. Papa? She threw her arms around him again, and I saw Dominic's shoulders shake with silent emotion. Through my tears, I watched him hold my daughter, our daughter now, and mouth words I could read even from a distance. Thank you. Elena handed me a tissue. Beautiful, she murmured. Now he just has to ask you. I laughed through my tears. Sophie gave permission. That was the hard part. Was it? Elena's smile was knowing. Or is letting yourself be loved the hard part? Before I could answer, Sophie came barreling into the kitchen, dragging Dominic by the hand. Mummy? Mummy? Papa asked if he could marry you, and I said yes. He's going to be my real daddy. She bounced excitedly. And he has to come to all my tea parties. Dominic stood in the doorway, his expensive suit grass-stained, his eyes red-rimmed. His expression transformed by joy and hope and something that looked like home. Hi, he said softly. Hi, I whispered back. Sophie tugged his hand impatiently. Well, aren't you going to ask her now? His lips curved. Tonight, Principessa. I have something special planned. With flowers? Sophie demanded. And candles? That's how they do it in movies. With flowers and candles, he promised, his eyes never leaving mine. And a question I very much hope she'll say yes to. My heart raced as Sophie cheered, already planning the wedding in her 7-year-old imagination. Because the mafia boss had asked my daughter's permission, now he just had to ask mine. Sophie spent the entire afternoon preparing me like I was heading into battle. You need the blue dress, Mummy. Papa likes you in blue. She rifled through my closet with the confidence of a seasoned stylist. And your hair down. Definitely down. How do you know what Papa likes? I asked, amused despite my racing heart. Because I pay attention. She gave me a look far too knowing for 7 years old. He stares at you when you're not looking, especially when you smile. Elena appeared with a jewelry box. From Mr. Salvatore. He thought these might be appropriate. Inside lay delicate diamond earrings, understated but clearly expensive. The note read, "To match your eyes when you cry happy tears." Doug, he's so romantic, Sophie sighed dramatically. Just like in my princess movies. By the time the sun began to set, I was dressed in the blue dress Sophie had selected. My hair loose around my shoulders, wearing Dominic's earrings and my heart on my sleeve. He's waiting in the garden, Elena said softly. And Sophie, your viewing station is ready. Viewing station? I asked. Sophie giggled. Papa said I could watch from my balcony. I helped plan everything. She grabbed my hand, suddenly serious. Say yes, Mummy. Please. I really want him to be my papa forever. We'll see what he asks, I managed, though we both knew the answer. The garden had been transformed. Fairy lights wound through the trees, creating constellations of soft gold. Candles in hurricane glasses lined the stone path, leading to the fountain where Dominic stood waiting. White roses, not red, I noticed. Something softer and more meaningful surrounded the area in elegant arrangements. He wore a dark suit, no tie, looking devastatingly handsome in the fading light. But it was his expression that stole my breath. Vulnerable, hopeful, completely open. Maya, my name was a prayer on his lips. I walked toward him, each step feeling like destiny. Sophie's watching from her balcony, he said with a slight smile. She insisted. Said this was a family moment. She helped plan this. Every detail. His eyes sparkled. The flowers, the lights, the timing. She's quite the romantic. We stood facing each other. The fountain's gentle sound providing a soundtrack to the most important moment of my life. 6 months ago, Dominic began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. I watched you from a distance, thinking I was protecting you out of obligation. A debt to be managed, a problem to be solved. He stepped closer. But Sophie taught me something I'd forgotten in my world of violence and control, that love isn't about power or possession. It's about showing up, every single day, and choosing the people who matter most. He took my hands in his. Maya Moretti, you're the strongest, most devoted woman I've ever met. You've survived abandonment and poverty. You've raised an extraordinary daughter alone. You've built a life from nothing but determination and love. His voice dropped. And somehow, impossibly, you've let me into that life. Tears streamed down my face. I'm not asking as a mafia boss or a protector or someone trying to settle a debt, he continued. I'm asking as a man who loves you, who loves Sophie, who wants nothing more than to spend every day proving he's worthy of you both. He released one of my hands to produce a velvet box. Will you marry me, Maya? Will you let me be Sophie's father and your husband? Will you give me the honor of calling you my family? He opened the box, revealing a ring that took my breath away, a sapphire the color of my dress, surrounded by diamonds that caught the candlelight like captured stars. Not a traditional diamond, he said quietly, because you're not a traditional woman. You're extraordinary. And you deserve something as unique as you are. Through my tears. I saw Sophie on her balcony, hands pressed to the glass, waiting. I saw Elena in the kitchen window, dabbing her eyes. I saw the man before me, dangerous and gentle, powerful and vulnerable, offering me not just protection but partnership. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Dominic. 1,000 times yes. His smile could have powered the city. He slid the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit because of course he'd paid attention to every detail, then pulled me into his arms. Thank you, he murmured against my hair. For trusting me, for choosing me, for giving me a family I never thought I'd have. Thank you for asking Sophie's permission, I said, pulling back to look at him, but understanding that her heart mattered as much as mine. She's our daughter now, he said simply. Of course her heart matters. From the balcony, Sophie's voice rang out clear and joyful. She said yes. Papa, she said yes. Dominic laughed a rich, genuine sound of pure happiness and waved up at her. I heard Principessa. Can I come down now? Elena said I had to wait for the kiss. He looked at me, eyebrow raised. Well, are we going to disappoint our daughter? Never, I whispered. When his lips met mine, it was nothing like that first forced kiss at a wedding that felt like a lifetime ago. This was choice. This was promise. This was the beginning of forever. Above us, Sophie cheered loud enough to wake the neighbors, and in that moment, surrounded by candlelight and love and the family we'd built from impossible circumstances, I knew the truth. The mafia boss who'd asked my daughter's permission had given me something more precious than protection or wealth. He'd given me a future worth believing in. The wedding took place 6 weeks later in the estate's garden, where everything had begun. Sophie insisted on helping with every detail from the yellow roses woven into the arbor to the placement of each chair. It has to be perfect, Mummy. This is our wedding, our wedding. Not just mine and Dominic's, but the three of us becoming a family. The guest list was small by design Elena and the household staff, a few of Dominic's most trusted men who Sophie had adopted as honorary uncles, my sister Melanie, who'd flown in skeptical and left in tears, and Sophie's teacher, who'd been moved by Dominic's attendance at every school event. No pomp, no pretense. Just the people who mattered. I stood in my room, Elena adjusting my simple ivory dress, when Sophie appeared in the doorway wearing her flower girl dress yellow silk with white roses embroidered along the hem. "Mummy, you look like a princess," she breathed. "You look like sunshine," I countered, kneeling to straighten her flower crown. "Are you nervous?" she asked, suddenly serious. "A little," I admitted. "Are you?" She shook her head. "Papa loves us. He promised he'd never leave. And Papa keeps his promises." The absolute certainty in her voice, the trust Dominic had earned day by day. Story by story, braid by imperfect braid, made my eyes sting with happy tears. "Yes, he does," I whispered. The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. I walked down the petal-strewn aisle with Sophie at my side because this wasn't about being given away, but about choosing to walk forward together. Dominic stood beneath the arbor in a midnight blue suit, his expression transforming when he saw us. Not just anticipation, not just love. Pure, overwhelming joy. The officiant spoke about partnership and family, about building futures on foundations of trust. But the words blurred as I focused on Dominic's face, on Sophie's small hand in mine, on the impossible beauty of this moment. "I do," I said when prompted, my voice steady and sure. "I do," Dominic echoed, his voice thick with emotion. Then, as the officiant prepared to pronounce us married, Dominic held up a hand. "Wait, there's one more vow I need to make." He turned to Sophie, kneeling so they were eye level. From his pocket he produced a small velvet box. "Sophie Marie Moretti," he began, his voice carrying across the garden, "I made promises to you when I asked your permission to marry your mother. But today, I want to make them official, in front of everyone we love." Sophie's eyes widened as he opened the box, revealing a delicate gold necklace with a small sunflower pendant. "I promise to protect you always. To listen to you, even when you're telling me I braided your hair wrong." Soft laughter rippled through the guests. "To be present for every milestone, every scraped knee, every tea party, and every moment in between." His voice roughened. "I promise to be the father you deserve. To love you as my own. To never, ever leave you." Tears streamed down my face as he continued. "Sophie, you taught me what it means to be a father. Not through blood or obligation, but through showing up, through earning trust, through choosing love every single day." He fastened the necklace around her neck. "Do you accept me as your papa, officially and forever?" Sophie threw her arms around him, her voice clear and certain. "I do, Papa, I do." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. When they pulled apart, Sophie looked at the officiant with 7-year-old authority. "Now you can say they're married." Through laughter and tears we were pronounced husband and wife. Dominic kissed me like I was his salvation, gentle and reverent and full of promise. Then Sophie wedged between us, and we stood there, the three of us wrapped in an embrace that felt like coming home. At the reception, Sophie dragged Dominic to the dance floor for the father-daughter dance he'd added to the schedule. I watched them sway to the music, his large hands careful on her small shoulders. Her face tilted up to his with absolute trust, and understood the truth. This wasn't a transaction, not an obligation or a debt settled. This was love. Messy and unconventional, and more real than anything I'd ever known. "You did it," Melanie said, appearing beside me with champagne. "You actually did it. Made a family out of impossible circumstances." "Sophie did it," I corrected, watching my daughter laugh as Dominic spun her in a careful circle. She saw past the danger to the man beneath. She taught us both how to trust again. Later, as the sun set and fairy lights twinkled to life, the three of us stood together, looking over the garden where so much had changed. "Thank you," Dominic murmured, Sophie drowsy between us. "For saying yes, for trusting me, for giving me a reason to be better." "Thank you for asking Sophie's permission," I replied, "for understanding that her heart mattered as much as mine, for becoming the father she needed." Sophie stirred, half asleep. "Are we a real family now?" she mumbled. Dominic and I answered in unison, "Yes, Principessa, a real family." "Good," she sighed, content. "Because I love you both more than Yellow, and that's a lot." Standing there in the gathering darkness, our daughter between us and a future full of promise ahead, I finally understood what Dominic had known from the beginning. Some families are born, others are chosen. And the strongest families, the ones built on trust, respect, and a 7-year-old's wisdom, are the ones that choose each other every single day. Not because they have to, but because there's nowhere else they'd rather be.